This is What Do You Bring to the Table, a series made by youth for youth that aims to explore the many, many career paths available within our Canadian food systems. By interviewing industry leaders across the country, we get a first-hand look at the various career opportunities available to the next generation, with a particular focus on equity and sustainability. We want to thank the Gay Lea Foundation and the Ontario Trillium Foundation for their generosity in supporting this project. Please visit our website www.seeds.ca/schoolfoodgardens and sign up for our free monthly e-newsletter to stay involved. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Links to those are on our website. If you like what we are doing, please drop a like, review, or comment. Or if you have the means to, contribute with a monetary donation through our website. Thanks for listening. This is episode 6, Juiee and Natalia.
Hello to everybody watching. My name is Juiee and I'm currently a grade 9 student volunteering for Waterloo Region School Food Gardens. Today I'm interviewing Miss Natalia Savard, studying to become a doctor of veterinary medicine at the Ontario Veterinary College. Ms. Savard has also worked with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency as part of working to counteract the effects of avian influenza on our local farmers. I'm very excited to conduct this interview today and to learn more about what you specialize in and are currently working on. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this.
Cool. Awesome. Ready to get started.
All right, so first trying to get to know you a little bit for our viewers and also just out of curiosity. So first question being, what do you do as part of the Canadian food system? What are you currently working on, if there's any specific projects you're leading? And what does a typical day of the week look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, I am a second year at the Ontario Veterinary College. And so I'm currently studying to be a large animal vet, so working directly with Canada's food system. And so I guess currently my role as like a veterinary student is just to gain as much experience and study as much as possible so that by the end of my 4 years at OVC, I'm ready to go and ready to hit the ground running, help working with producers to kind of, maintain their animal health and welfare. I guess a typical day looks like a lot of class. We have a lot of class at OVC, usually 6 to 8 hours of class a day. So Mondays and Tuesdays are usually a lot of lectures, and we'll have different lecturers come in for 1 hour blocks. And they'll kind of just like present things that's within their specialty. So that's kind of a cool thing because a lot of university classes are, the whole class is taught by 1 or 2 profs, but at OVC it's a different prof every single day. Every day is different, so you really never know what you're gonna get when you start your week. And then Thursdays and Fridays are a lot more labs, and that's when we get to do a lot more hands-on stuff. So OVC has like a teaching barn, so there's cattle in there are horses in there, sometimes there's sheep and pigs as well, depending on what time of the year it is. So that's really cool. They have school beagles, so you get to practice like doing physical exams, listening to their heart, listening to their lungs, collecting blood, things like that. So it's always interesting. It's something different every day. So it's fun.
That sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess to our second question, what were your interests growing up? And did they help you in any way to lead you to where you are now? And were you always interested in pursuing this career, or maybe did you have something else in mind growing up?
Yeah, for sure. So from a really young age, I decided that I loved animals. I definitely wanted to work with animals in some way. So when I was younger, I was thinking I could be a vet, I could be a zookeeper, young kid dreaming. And then as I grew up and when I went to high school, I realized I really love science as well. So I took a lot of sciences in high school. I took the chemistry, biology, physics, all the math, stuff like that. And I really, really loved it. And so in high school, I got a job at a vet clinic just down the road from me, which was super convenient. But it kind of pieced it all together, and it showed me that I love animals and I also love science. and like medicine. And so it was a really good way for me to combine my interests. And so I knew going into my undergrad at the University of Guelph that I definitely did want to pursue veterinary medicine after I finished my 4-year undergrad. So yeah.
So you mentioned that you did work with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Could you maybe elaborate a bit more about what you worked on there? So a little bit more about what avian influenza is, and how does it affect our food systems, our farmers, and even ourselves?
Sure, yeah. So basically, for anyone who doesn't know, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is a government organization, and it's a branch that deals with everything that affects food safety in Canada. So they do like on-farm, meetings and things. They'll make policies. They do quality control to make sure that the food is safe for human consumption. So all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, this summer they have a program called a veterinary summer student internship program. And so they hire vet students for a couple months of the summer to work on various projects. And so because, we had an avian influenza outbreak this summer, they kind of scrapped some of the projects and just had us working on avian influenza. So that's what I got to focus my summer on last summer, and it was a really good experience. I learned a lot. So avian influenza is basically a type of bird flu. And it's caused when the birds are exposed to a virus, and this virus is called influenza A virus. So when humans get like their flu from year to year, it's also a type of influenza virus. So it's just this one specifically affects birds. And so this virus, this influenza A virus, is carried by wild birds kind of all over the world. And since wild birds are migrators, this is how the disease is spreading everywhere. And so it gets really hard to control because wild birds may not look sick, but when they're drinking from a water source that may be a backyard poultry, so somebody who has just some chickens in their backyard for eggs or meat or anything like that. So if they're sharing the same water source as a bird that's infected with avian influenza, well, suddenly you might have avian influenza in your backyard bird. And so last summer we just saw like a lot of avian influenza everywhere. It was the first time we had seen this strain. So it's called an H5N1 strain of avian influenza. So that was new to Canada last year. And so when our domestic poultry, so when our chickens, our turkeys, sometimes ducks are exposed to this virus, we see really, really high levels of sickness and really high levels of mortality. And so that makes it really hard for a farmer to go into their barn and see that like almost 100% of their birds are either sick or dying. Right. So that's really, really tricky for our food systems. And so we spent a lot of the last summer kind of counseling producers through what to do. We wanted to make sure that we were doing everything as safe as possible so that we were protecting ourselves. We were protecting other flocks in the area. We didn't want it to spread either. So we had to come up with ways in which to, get rid of those birds, how to disinfect the barn, how to clean everything so that there was no risk of that avian influenza virus then transmitting to that new set of birds. And so, that's one way in which avian influenza really affects our food systems is because there's like huge losses for farmers, both financially, they're losing all their birds, and also like mentally, it's really tough to see that too. And so, going into our food systems, that translates into having less meat, less eggs, because all those poultry are being affected. So and even ourselves, so avian influenza is a zoonotic virus. So that means animals can get it and humans can get it as well. So it can transfer between. Now, the good thing is that if you're being careful when you're handling birds that are infected, you should be okay. So we kind of told producers, kind of treat it like COVID. And COVID was kind of useful. We got them to wear masks, gloves, changing their clothes, changing their boots when they're interacting with birds in general or birds that they thought were sick, and kind of just like minimizing the contact as much as possible. Now, the good thing is with avian influenza that if any of the meat from a bird that was sick somehow got into our food system, if you cooked it, it would be totally safe. So there's no food concerns there. But the government was pretty strict with, catching any infected barns, and then none of those birds would be able to get into our food system. So they were really trying to reduce the spread that way.
Yeah, that's a lot of very interesting information. Yeah, it seems like the way it's been impacting all of us, it's a very huge issue, even though it's not that well known. I think we all need to take that into consideration. So it's very interesting to learn more about that. So you mentioned that you started working on this last summer. So has this issue been kind of recent in Canada, or has it been like here since a while?
So the strain that we're dealing with right now is the H5N1 strain. So that's viruses can change the way they're like formed, and that will impact the way that they're able to infect animals. And so we've had cases of avian influenza in Canada in the past, but they've been different strains. So they're different. So the H number would be different, or the N number would be different, and that would change how they're formed. But previously, we've only ever had avian influenza outbreaks in one province. So that last summer was the first summer that we got hit, and almost all the provinces of Canada were affected by this virus, which made it like a huge issue. Which is why the Canadian Food Inspection Agency was so strapped for employees' time, resources, because we had never seen that widespread of an infection before. And so the Western provinces got hit really hard last summer. So BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. And so I kind of worked remotely just through my computer and my phone. I worked for the producers in the Western provinces to kind of guide them on what to do, just because we had never seen that scale of problem before.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. So you mentioned that this virus can spread because, birds migrate, so it impacts other poultry. So has this only been occurring in Canada, or was it found to originate someplace else?
Yeah, so it came from other continents. So Canada knew that it was going to come. It was just a matter of when is it actually going to get here? They have seen this H5N1 avian influenza in Asia, Europe, and I think Africa, and some of the other countries down in the Pacific. And so Canada got hit last summer with it, and the States got hit as well last summer. So it kind of migrated over to North America. Probably they're guessing through those migrating birds that are coming over that are infected. And because those the wild birds, they don't show sickness like our chickens, turkeys, and ducks do. It's harder to see, and they're able to survive with the virus and then transmit it over here.
Okay. So what do you see as the future of Canada's food system having to fight this? Seems to be a really huge hurdle.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky, and it was definitely a big learning curve last summer on they had a lot of policies in place, just kind of sitting in a room and thinking what is gonna work, didn't actually translate a lot of the time into, okay, this works. So there was a lot of sitting last summer and new policy making and trying to figure out what's the best way to go about this issue. So I definitely think that this is, tricky, but I think that we have a better handle on how to go about dealing with this epidemic now. And I think this H5N1 will be around for a while until, the virus naturally just kind of settles, and maybe we might see it a little bit popping up, and it might just be something that just they're able to live with after a while. But just because, same with COVID, when you get that new virus introduced, it goes crazy. But then after maybe a couple years, the trend starts to go down, and people start to build up resistance, and it just kind of settles into the population that way.
So I guess going into our next question, do you find that while Canada was facing this issue, and still is, that this was a huge kind of reason for farmers to quit raising livestock and poultry and such things, and sort of kind of solely focus on growing vegetation?
Yeah, I definitely think that avian influenza is a hard thing for producers. Like I had said before, when you walk into a barn and you see so many, sick and dying animals, that's really hard. And farmers they care a lot about the animals that they raise, and they're very proud of the work that they do. And so, yeah, that's definitely tricky for them. But I think that farmers are also really resilient and hardworking. And I think that, this is just something that they're going to be able to overcome. There will always be a demand for animal protein in society. Some people choose not to eat it, totally fine. Some people do, okay. So there will always be that population that is going to demand that animal protein. And so I think that even though this is a really tricky time for producers, I think they're going to be able to overcome it. I don't think that this is necessarily going to switch people for doing more, vegetation or cash crop farming. For the most part, I think that farmers will stick it out and just see this through.
Yeah, that sounds like good news.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess going to the next question, you kind of already touched upon this earlier. How have you worked with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency in counteracting this influenza? And what were your findings? Did you see that it was slowly diminishing, or it's still kind of at a high?
Yeah, so like I said, I worked remotely last summer and I worked for the Western provinces. And what we kind of noticed is that in periods of like migration, so in the spring and in the fall, is when a lot of those like birds are coming over that are possibly infected. And that's when we saw a lot of spread happening. And so, one of the things we definitely noticed was that biosecurity was really important. So biosecurity is just, trying to maintain things to be as like clean or sterile as possible. And so biosecurity is a really huge topic on farms because you don't really want to be bringing in any extra pathogens if you can help it. And so we really saw that, by tightening up biosecurity practices, when producers maybe change their boots from outside to inside, wash their hands, they weren't going to other neighbors' farms or friends' farms that also had poultry who might have avian influenza on their farm. We really encouraged strong biosecurity practices. We did see like a decrease in cases that way when we were able to like educate the producers and just make them aware. Like a lot of them already know biosecurity, like farmers are very smart. They know how to do that, but maybe just being reminded and just being given a couple extra tips on how they can improve those biosecurity practices was definitely helpful. I guess what I spent doing was I worked on in a sector of the response called Sick Bird Line. And so there was a number posted, and any producers that had, thought they might have avian influenza called that line. So I would work with the producers to kind of educate them on avian influenza. I worked with vets in the area to see if they could get it in sample, coordinated sending things to labs just to make sure that we had quick turnaround. We were able to test those samples and let them know if it was avian influenza or not, and then we could take appropriate measures from there. The producers were also required to submit their production numbers, so how much mortality they had in a barn, how much their birds were drinking, how much their birds were eating. And so typically, kind of like us, like if we feel like we're sick, then you don't drink as much, you don't eat as much, you kind of just sleep, you're not really active. So we see with avian influenza that their water consumption goes down, food consumption goes down, the number of eggs that they lay goes down. And so by monitoring each producer's numbers, we were able to catch a couple of cases a little earlier than we would have, just by using those numbers. So that was also really interesting.
Yeah, that's very useful information, especially. Now going into more about how you got into this and advice for those who might want to be going to, a similar field or just figuring out what career, such as myself. Like, being in my first year of high school, I'm still kind of figuring out what am I interested in, what do I want to do. So I guess my first question in that regard, what kinds of courses, programs, or extracurricular activities did you do during your secondary and post-secondary education that kind of helped you?
Yeah, so like I kind of said before, I think that in high school I was really interested in like the science courses. So kind of like grade 9 and 10, I think science is mandatory, but then in 11 and 12 you can kind of pick more courses on what you want to do depending on what your interests are. And so I decided like science was really something I was interested in. So I made sure I was in every biology, chemistry, physics. They had like environmental science at my school. So really taking advantage of those opportunities. And then I also got a job at a vet clinic because I thought that might be something that is interesting to me. So I think like just being able to like, kind of think about what interests you. And you're still young too, you're in grade 9. So anybody who's watching this who's like that young, like you have so much time to figure it out. But that was definitely like, I kind of thought in like grade 9 and 10, like, okay, this is something that I want to do. So, just going out and like maybe there's clubs at your school that, are about things that would interest you. So that would be great. So then I guess picking my university major was interesting because I'm from Pickering, Ontario, so very suburban, no farms anywhere. But I had the vet clinic that I worked at there, they told me like, oh, go into the Bachelor of Science in Agriculture program at Guelph. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. It's so great. And so I was like thinking about it just because it was kind of outside my comfort zone. But then I ended up applying and getting into that program. So I did the 4-year Bachelor of Science in Agriculture at Guelph. And I learned so much. And people in my class, were super helpful with like just explaining things to me because I wasn't from a farm. So I was a little bit behind the game in first year. But that was really great. And in university, there's a club for everything. So they had like all different kinds of like agriculture-based clubs, like a dairy science club, sheep and goat clubs, all these things that I really, really wanted to get involved in. And so sometimes a little too much, like I had to really time manage with some of the clubs, but yeah, it was honestly a really great experience. And I think like just taking advantage of all the extracurricular opportunities that are available for you are really important in like, kind of deciding what your interests are.
Yeah, that sounds really great. Yeah, I guess going into the next question, you said all your life you loved animals and you've been into science, but what was kind of like the turning point when you decided to pursue this career? And was it easy, or were there obstacles you faced while trying to achieve this? And what motivated you to study to become a veterinarian?
Yeah, so I guess, like I said, I was really interested in like science and animals. So when I worked at that clinic in high school, I decided like, yes, I want to, try to get into the Ontario Veterinary College. And so worked really hard through my undergrad to do that. But when I worked at that clinic in high school, it was a small animal clinic. And so going into the Bachelor of Science in Agriculture program, I had never had any experience with agriculture before. And so taking those 4 years to really learn about the food system and all the work that goes into it and all the people behind it was really, really eye-opening for me. And so I spent those 4 years in my program. I think it was the summer after my first year when I worked on my first dairy farm, and I absolutely loved it. It was like so great. And I decided like, yes, this is the career for me. Like I definitely want to be a large animal veterinarian. And so I think that passion for medicine, for agriculture really motivated me to work really hard in undergrad to get accepted into Ontario Veterinary College. And I think that, now going through school, I think what motivates me now is, when I'm able to go out and shadow with vets, spend a day with them, it kind of reminds me like why I'm like in this program. Because sometimes it is a lot of school, and like I'm sure anybody in high school or in undergrad would feel the same way. Like it feels like a lot, and it's months at a time, so it feels like it's almost never ending. But being able to be reminded of like why you're doing something and why you're working so hard and putting all this effort into it is really nice. So when I go out with vets, I'm like, yes, like I love this and this is what I'm working towards, and I'm this will be me one day. And it's just like a really nice feeling, and it gets me excited, and then I'm ready to study again.
Yeah, that's a great motivation factor, just knowing you've always been going for this, so you want to keep going at it. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, we're kind of on our last question here. So what advice would you have for youth that may be interested in following a similar career path as you, or just trying to decide what to pursue?
Yeah, for sure. I think that kind of like I said before, taking advantage of all the extracurricular opportunities that are available for you is like so important. And I think just like getting lots of experiences in different places and different fields will really help you to decide what you like and what you don't like. Even if you spent, a summer working at a job and you're like, I didn't really love that, it was different. At least you kind of know now, maybe that's not what my interests are. Maybe my interests are more this. And so, specifically in agriculture, there are so many different areas. There's so many people who are involved in the Canadian food system and areas to get involved in. And I really think that there's something for everyone in agriculture. And, yeah, I guess like during my university experiences, I tried to take advantage of like all the clubs and like different jobs. Like every summer I like tried to work somewhere different, just so I was getting that extra experience. And yeah, like I said, like kind of weeding out like my likes from my dislikes. But there's like organizations like 4-H, if they have 4-H in somebody's hometown, if you wanted to get a little bit more experience in agriculture, or different clubs at school. This is like really the best way to like try new things, learn new things, and also meet people with similar interests too.
Yeah, and that's great advice. I'll definitely take that into consideration and help me out. Yeah. Yeah, I think that concludes our interview. So thank you so much, Natalia, for taking time out of your day for this. I really learned a lot, and I'm sure the viewers who are going to be watching this also learned a lot of information. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Again, this was amazing. It's an honor for me to interview you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a privilege to be interviewed today. So thank you, Juiee.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of What Do You Bring to the Table? See you again soon.